They laughed as she stepped onto the range, not quietly or behind her back, but straight at her. A heavy woman bundled in winter gear, fumbling to cinch her plate carrier, assigned as support to an elite unit on Christmas night. To them, she was a punchline. Extra weight, extra risk, the one they'd have to haul out if things went sideways. Then the training alarm failed. The night went live and hostile fire sliced through the snow. Minutes later, with the radio dead and the unit pinned, a single rifle answered from the darkness. One shot, clean, flawless, mythic. Snow fell thick over Range 7, burying the ground in white silence. December 24th, most bases were easing into Christmas. Not here, not for Delta 4. Sergeant Elena Frost hauled her plate carrier tight, the fabric biting into her sides. It didn't fit anymore. Nothing did. 40 pounds heavier than her qualification weight, every ounce exposed under hard lights. "Need a hand with that, Frost?" The voice came from behind. Corporal Kyle Mercer. Sharp, efficient, elite, everything she used to be. "I'm good. You sure? Looks like you're fighting a bear." Laughter rippled through staging. 6 Delta 4 operators watched her struggle with gear that once felt like skin. Lieutenant Ryan Caldwell leaned on the weapons rack, arms folded. Commands really scraping the bottom for Overwatch support. "Maybe it's a load-bearing experiment," someone muttered. "Stress testing." More laughs. Elena said nothing, snugged the last strap, checked her sidearm, and reached for the rifle case. Her fingers paused at the latch. "What's in there?" Mercer asked. "Snacks." "Probably an emotional support weapon," Caldwell said. The case was old, scarred, dusted over. No one knew what it held. No one cared. Elena lifted it without looking, the weight familiar despite the years. 37 pounds. She knew because she'd carried it through 14 countries, 42 operations, and one catastrophic failure that ended her career. Frost. Caldwell cut through the noise. "Observation only. Stay back. Stay quiet. Stay out of the way. We clear. Clear. Good. Because if it heats up, we can't afford dead weight slowing us down. Dead weight." The words sank like stones. She'd heard versions of them for 3 years, since the injury, since the wait, since medical limitations stamped her file and pushed her into support. They thought she didn't belong. They were right. She belonged somewhere better. She just had to prove it. No one at Range 7 knew Elena Frost had once been the most precise, long-range shooter in the theater. Not good. The best. 7 years earlier, before the blast shattered her left knee and ended field deployments, she held the division record. 19 confirmed at ranges beyond 1,000 meters. 3 taken in impossible conditions. Sandstorms, zero visibility, moving targets. Her call sign had been Whisper, because targets fell before the sound arrived. She wasn't just a shooter. She was a ghost. Ghosts don't survive explosions intact. The IED was shallow. Pressure plate triggered. She'd been moving fast, pushing hard, racing dawn to an Overwatch. The blast threw her 6 meters. She remembered light more than pain. White, absolute, sun-bright. 3 days later, X-rays showed titanium pins knitting her knee. The surgeon, a colonel with kind eyes, said she'd walk again, maybe run. He didn't say combat. The medic called her lucky. Lucky to keep the leg. Lucky to walk. They didn't understand that losing speed was losing everything. Slow meant liability. Slow meant others paid. Slow meant you didn't belong. Rehab took 8 months. Depression took a year. Weight crept on, then piled up. Comfort food, inactivity, meds, prednisone swelling her frame, anxiety pills dulling the edge. When she could run again, she wasn't fast enough. Couldn't meet the standard. Couldn't get back online. She tried, hard. Failed the assessment 4 times. Each failure logged, another nail in the coffin. Her jacket reassigned. Support, training, observation, testing, admin. A uniform without the fight. Dead weight. The rifle inside the case was no longer standard issue. It was a relic, an AM-24 SWS she'd carried across Afghanistan, altered far beyond regulation, tuned to her breathing, her pulse, the way she interpreted the world through glass. Every mark had a memory. The gouge in the stock from Kandahar, the custom trigger guard she added after a night op in Helmand. The scope had been upgraded twice, dialed precisely to her eye. This weapon understood her better than any human ever had. Command had ordered it turned in when she was reassigned. She filed the forms, tagged it for storage, then quietly pulled it back from the armory 3 days later. No one noticed. No one cared about outdated gear from a washed-up operator. She kept it spotless, mission-ready. Once a week she broke it down completely, cleaned each piece, rebuilt it in the dark. Muscle memory, ritual, quiet focus. Not because she expected to fire it again, but because letting it decay felt like surrender. And Elena Frost never learned how to quit. Her apartment held no medals, no commendations, no photos from better days. She boxed all that up after the third failed assessment. Seeing who she'd been only made accepting who she was harder. The rifle stayed out, always close, always ready. Some people kept albums. Elena kept steel and glass perfect. It was the last piece of her former life she refused to release. The brief was straightforward. Night navigation through the Eastern Valley, simulated enemy contact, helicopter extract at Rally Point Bravo. Weather's degrading, the ops officer warned. Visibility under 50 meters. Winds gusting 30 knots. We can delay. Caldwell shook his head. Delta 4 trains in worse. We run it tonight, Christmas Eve. Most units were standing down, but elite teams didn't take holidays. They used empty ranges and thin staffing. Elena checked her kit one last time. Thermal optics, radio, medical. Rifle case strapped across her back like a coffin. Mercer noticed. Planning to shoot something, Frost? Overwatch uses optics. That case seems heavy for Beanos. She didn't answer. The unit stepped off at 2100. Snow thickened fast, driven sideways by wind that cut through cold weather layers. Elena trailed 20 meters back. Clear her lane. Observe, report, stay unseen. Her knee throbbed, old damage arguing with new cold. She ignored it. At 2147, the first anomaly appeared. Delta 4, this is Overwatch, Elena transmitted. Thermal distortion at grid November Tango 72. Caldwell replied curtly. Likely wildlife. Stay sharp. Negative. Patterns wrong. Too uniform. Frost, we don't need analysis. Watch our 6. She swallowed the response and adjusted the thermal. The distortion shifted. Not organic, more mechanical, heat-masked but flawed. At 2203, the drone feed went dark. At 2208, comms crackled with intermittent static. At 2214, Elena spotted a second heat source, then a third. Delta 4. Multiple contacts moving parallel to our route. Frost. Enough. This is a training lane. There are no contacts. But instinct was screaming. Something was off. The first shot wasn't supposed to be live, but the sound was unmistakable. Not blanks, but the deep, concussive boom of real fire, followed by a scream. Contact right. Formation broke. Elena dropped prone. Adrenaline burned through 3 years of rust. More rounds. Automatic fire tearing through trees. This wasn't training. Delta 4, status? The net dissolved into chaos, taking fire. Multiple hostiles. Unknown strength. Caldwell's hit. Elena's mind accelerated. An assault on a U.S. training range. On Christmas Eve. Either reckless confidence or sheer desperation. Through the thermal scope, she counted flashes. 8 shooters at minimum, maybe more. Disciplined spacing, military-grade weapons. This wasn't chaos. It was deliberate. Command, this is Overwatch. Immediate QRF and air support required. Delta 4 is pinned. Negative on air. Weather below minimums. Ground response is 30 minutes out. 30 minutes might as well have been forever. Delta 4, fall back to Rally Point Alpha. Mercer's voice cracked with strain over the net. We can't hold. But they weren't withdrawing. They were being shaped, driven forward. Elena saw it instantly. The attackers weren't rushing them. They were funneling them into an L-shaped kill zone. Textbook. And Delta 4 was walking straight into it. "Stop!" Elena transmitted. "It's a trap. They're channeling you toward an ambush at Alpha." Silence. Then Caldwell snapped back. "Stay down and stay out of it. We don't need input from support." She watched it unfold anyway. Watched them advance. Watched them step exactly where she said they would. Watched fire erupt from 2 directions. Watched Delta 4 get shredded. The screaming faded. Not because it was over, but because they'd gone to ground, stuck in a shallow depression with almost no cover, pinned, unable to push or pull back. The radio broke apart into fragments. 2 wounded. Ammo low. Where is support? Elena was 200 meters back, cut off by terrain, darkness, and the limits stamped on her file. Stay back. Stay quiet. Stay invisible. Dead weight. Her knee burned. Her fingers were numb. The rifle case dragged at her spine like ballast. She could stay put. Wait for QRF. Let cleared operators solve it. No one would fault her. Observation only. Not combat cleared. Not physically qualified. Elena shut her eyes. The blast came back. The white flash that ended her career. The pain that stripped away who she'd been. 3 years of fear. Of failing. Of being useless. Of becoming exactly what they said. But fear was a luxury. Delta 4 didn't have 30 minutes. She popped the latches. The M24 slid free like a remembered dream. Cold steel. Perfect balance. Every scar etched in memory. She put it together by feel, working blind in the dark. The scope was outdated. The rounds were older still. Both past their official life. Both exactly right. Elena chambered around. Her breathing slowed. The tremor in her hands disappeared. For the first time in 3 years, she felt whole. 1 round, she whispered into the night. 1 is enough. Finding the enemy leader took no effort. He was the one conserving ammo. Elena learned long ago that leaders don't shoot. They direct, they manage, they control. While his team fixed Delta 4 in place, he stayed 30 meters back, tucked behind a ridgeline, thermal optics sweeping the fight. She studied him through glass. Balanced stance, deliberate motion, not militia, trained, dangerous, first priority, range 847 meters, wind gusting 25 to 35 knots, mostly east to west, swirling unpredictably. Visibility 0, thermal only, temperature 19 degrees and falling, pressure dropping, which meant slightly higher flight. He wasn't static. Every 45 seconds he shifted position, avoiding counterfire. Smart, disciplined, exactly what she'd do. The shot demanded flawless timing, calculation, execution. Most shooters would call it impossible. Elena called it routine. She settled behind a fallen log, packing snow into a stable rest. Her knee screamed, cold, damage, strain layered together. She ignored it. Pain was data, not command. The body could protest. The mind stayed clear. The rifle felt right, honest. The stock seated into her shoulder like return. Her cheek found the worn groove. Her finger rested at the trigger, waiting. Patience was half the work. She regulated her breathing. 4 seconds in. Hold 2. 4 seconds out. Between breaths, between heartbeats, the world stilled. Everything not the target dissolved. This was the place she'd missed. The space where Elena Frost vanished and only the shot existed. The commander moved again. She didn't chase him. She predicted him. Pattern revealed intention. Intention revealed position. He favored the right. Longer step left. Old injury or habit. Either way, repeatable. Wind steady at 28. She felt it on her skin. Watched snow bend. Drift 4.2 mils right. Maybe 4.3 with gusts. Cold air thickened density. Drop adjusted. Cold alone cost 6 inches. Textbooks said 6.8 mils at this range. Textbooks didn't account for snow-choked air, thermal inversion, conditions that shouldn't exist. Elena didn't compute. 7 years compressed into instinct. Wind on her face, pressure in her lungs, the bite of cold, all data, processed below thought. Muscle memory, pattern recognition, 10,000 shots across 100 conditions. The commander paused, checking his watch. 3 seconds still. Enough. Her finger took the slack. Smooth pressure. No jerk, no anticipation. She exhaled, held the last fraction, waited for the gap between beats. Silence. She pressed. Recoil came clean and familiar. Flash bloomed and vanished. She didn't blink. Tracked through recoil. She knew the shot before the bullet flew, felt it in bone. The thermal signature collapsed. Not wounded. Finished. The fire pattern shifted instantly. Confusion. Disarray. She couldn't hear the radios, but she didn't need to. Their control was gone. No sound. No visible threat. Just absence. Elena didn't pause. Didn't celebrate. She was already on the next. Target 2 was simple. Exposed. Focused entirely on Delta 4. Fire from behind never crossed his mind. Task fixation. Rookie error from someone who should have known better. Shot 2. 623 meters. Wind eased slightly. No lead. Center mass. She pressed. Signature dropped. Shot 3 was moving, advancing, firing, trying to complicate the shot. Good method. Useless. 701 meters. Moving target. She tracked rhythm. 3 steps. Fire. 2 steps. Fire. Predictable. Again. Lead 3 body widths. Adjust elevation. Press. He fell mid-stride. Thought was gone now. Only action. 7 years distilled into minutes. This was the work. This was what they couldn't take with paperwork and limitations and labels. They'd measured her body and ignored her mind. The hostile element broke. Whoever they were, they hadn't planned for a ghost in snowfall. Someone unseen. Untraceable. Uncounterable. They withdrew fast, disciplined, bounding properly. Correct moves, too slow. Elena took one more shot. The farthest. Beyond comfort. Beyond reason. 981 meters. Wind screaming. Snow thick. Darkness total. Barely a heat trace. Moving fast. Weaving well. Impossible. Even for her. She took it anyway. Elevation maxed. Wind guessed. Lead felt, not calculated. She didn't aim this round. She felt it. Letting her body recall 10,000 repetitions. Letting the rifle become an extension of intent. Exhale. Hold. The quiet between heartbeats. Press. The rifle spoke once more. Through the scope, across nearly a kilometer of frozen dark, the heat signature faltered, collapsed, and never rose again. The signature vanished, and then there was silence. Absolute silence. The hostile element was gone, swallowed by the night as if it had never existed. Delta 4's radio crackled. They're breaking contact. What the hell just happened? Elena cleared her weapon with unsteady hands. Not fear, not adrenaline. Just the aftermath. The descent from that narrow place where only the shot exists. She laid the rifle down carefully, almost reverently, and waited. For understanding. For realization. The overweight support observer they'd mocked had just saved them with shots they believed impossible. She didn't smile. Didn't feel victorious. Only exhausted and justified. And finally, after 3 long years, she felt like herself again as the quick reaction force arrived 23 minutes later. By then, the attackers were gone, dissolved into wilderness like smoke. Delta 4 was alive. 2 wounded, neither critical. Caldwell had a clean through and through in the shoulder. Mercer took shrapnel, but was breathing. QRF medics worked while security swept the perimeter. They located 4 enemy firing positions, all abandoned. At 3, there was blood. Someone hit them hard, the QRF sergeant reported. Who was shooting? Mercer looked to Caldwell. Caldwell scanned the team. No one answered. They didn't know. Command, this is QRF Actual. All personnel accounted for except one support observer. Frost, Caldwell said quietly. Elena Frost, Overwatch. Where? 200 meters back. We told her to stay behind. They found her 15 minutes later, seated in the snow beside a fallen log. The rifle was broken down and packed, thermal off. She was just breathing. Ma'am, are you hurt? Elena looked up. No. Did you see what happened? We've got signs of precision fire from this direction. 4 confirmed hits. She paused, then spoke softly. I took the shots. The soldier blinked. All of them. Yes. Range, roughly 600 to 900 meters. His face shifted from disbelief to confusion to awe. Ma'am, in these conditions, that's impossible. Elena stood slowly, her knee protesting. No, just difficult. They escorted her back to staging where Delta IV was being treated. When she entered, every conversation stopped. Mercer spoke first. Frost, did you really? She met his eyes and said nothing. Caldwell pushed himself upright, shoulder wrapped, face pale, eyes steady. How many rounds? 6. Hits? 6. Silence filled the space. Distance. Does it matter? Caldwell watched her a long moment. Then he did something she hadn't seen in 3 years. He came to attention. One by one, Delta IV followed, wounded included, even Mercer, who'd laughed earlier. They stood without a word, because sometimes respect is too large for speech. The debrief lasted 4 hours. Command wanted everything: ranges, wind calls, target ID. Elena answered clinically, without color, without drama. At 0347, the operations officer leaned back. Sergeant Frost, your file notes reassignment due to physical limitations. Yes, sir. It also notes a division record for long-range marksmanship prior to injury. Yes, sir. What it doesn't explain is why you carried an unauthorized weapon tonight. The room tightened. Elena held his gaze. The M24 was slated for decommission 3 years ago. I maintained it for familiarization. That's not an answer. No, sir, it isn't. He studied her, then smiled. Good. If you'd lied, I'd be disappointed. He closed the file. Here's what happens next. We're launching a full investigation into tonight's attack. It'll take weeks. He looked directly at her. In the meantime, I'm restoring your combat status, pending medical review. You're cleared for field operations. Elena blinked. Sir, I don't meet the physical standards. Standards are built for typical operators. You're not typical. He rose from his chair. You saved 6 lives tonight, Frost. You did it in conditions that shouldn't allow precision fire. At distances most shooters wouldn't even attempt. He held out his hand. Welcome back. No one offered apologies. Not directly, not out loud. But over the next 48 hours, everything shifted. Mercer brought her coffee, the good kind, from the ops center. Caldwell asked her opinion on weapon modifications and actually listened. The rest of Delta IV began including her in planning, asking about angles, wind calls, drift compensation. One evening, 3 days after Christmas, Elena found a package outside her quarters. Inside was a new plate carrier. Proper size, correctly fitted, top-tier kit. No note, no name. Just the Delta IV patch stitched on the shoulder. She traced the stitching with her fingers. Some apologies don't need words. The following week, she returned to the range. Range 3, long distance. She wasn't alone. Delta IV stood watching. Show us, Caldwell said. Elena set up her rifle. The M24, now officially reinstated. Still modified beyond regulation. Still zero to her breathing. Still perfect. She fired 5 rounds at 1,000 meters. 5 impacts. How? Mercer asked. Elena smiled. Not smug, just honest. Practice, patience, and understanding that weight doesn't define capability. She packed the rifle with care, and never assume the quiet ones can't shoot. Caldwell laughed. actually laughed. Noted. As she passed, one operator spoke softly. "Hey, Frost." She turned. "Thanks for not giving up on us." Elena met his eyes. "I didn't do it for you." "Then why?" "Because when I took the oath, it didn't come with weight limits." Christmas Day arrived late at Range 7. The investigation continued. Security was elevated. Federal agents swarmed, questioning, collecting, measuring every casing and trace of blood. Still, Command authorized a stand down for dinner. Even in crisis, some traditions survived. The mess hall wore improvised decorations, string lights, paper chains, a small plastic tree leaning near the serving line, ridiculous and perfect. Music played from a phone speaker, old hymns, familiar melodies, reminders of homes far away. Elena sat alone at first, out of habit. 3 years of invisibility had trained her to choose corners, to eat quickly, to take up little space. Old habits linger. Then Caldwell appeared, tray in hand. His shoulder was wrapped, and his arm hung in a sling, but he moved easily enough. "Mind if we sit?" Before she could reply, all of Delta Fu dragged chairs over. Mercer, his face still marked from the fight. Specialists, Chen and Rodriguez from perimeter duty. Corporal Williams, shrapnel bandage visible. Even Lieutenant Morrison from command, who'd coordinated the QRF. They crowded the table, loud and unself-conscious, claiming space, and doing it with her at the center. They ate in an easy quiet for a while. Turkey that had probably been frozen too long, boxed stuffing, canned cranberry sauce. Christmas dinner anyway. No one complained. Then, Mercer cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology." Elena looked up, surprised. "You already—" "No, not for the other night. For before that." He held her gaze. "For assuming. For judging. For thinking appearance meant capability. For the jokes. For being an ass." "We all were," Rodriguez added softly. "And we were wrong. Deeply wrong." Elena set her fork down. "I was heavier. I was slower. You weren't wrong about that." "But we were wrong about what mattered," Caldwell said, leaning forward. "Speed isn't everything. Endurance isn't everything. Hell, even shooting isn't everything." "Then what is?" "Not quitting. Not when it counts. Not when lives are on the line." He raised his glass of water. "To Sergeant Frost, who carried us when we couldn't carry ourselves." The whole table lifted their glasses. Water. No alcohol. Honest, sober, real. Something loosened in Elena's chest. Not pain, but release. Like ice cracking in spring. Like breathing fully for the first time in years. 3 years of shame. 3 years of believing she didn't belong. 3 years of thinking weight defined worth. And in minutes of combat, she'd remembered what she'd always known. Warriors aren't measured by bodies. They're measured by will. "To second chances," she said quietly, her voice tight. They drank. Chen spoke next. "That 981-meter shot. I ran the math. In those conditions, it shouldn't have worked. Wind variance alone should have pushed you half a meter off." Elena smiled faintly. "Ballistics matter, but they aren't everything." "Then what is?" "Trust. In your weapon. Your training. Yourself." She paused. "And knowing the impossible is sometimes just the possible no one's tried yet." Williams laughed. "That's fortune cookie wisdom." "Maybe. Still true." Outside, snow began falling again, soft, gentle. The violence of 3 nights earlier felt unreal, like another life. But the bandages were real. The investigation was real. The 4 hostile bodies pulled from the snow were very real. Chapel bells rang across the base, delayed Christmas carols, sincere and off schedule. Someone had cued joy to the world. Elena looked around the table. Men who'd mocked her. Men she'd saved. Men who finally saw her without assumptions. "Question," Mercer said. "That last shot, 981 meters in that wind. How did you even?" Elena actually smiled. "Trade secret. Come on, tell me. Make that shot and I'll explain. Mercer laughed. So never. Never say never. Elena stood, gathered her tray, and turned to leave. Then she stopped and looked back. 6 days ago, you thought I couldn't shoot. Silence. Then Caldwell lifted his glass again. Merry Christmas, Frost. Merry Christmas, Delta 4. Outside, snow remade the base, clean, white, covering old scars, making everything feel new, untouched, possible. Elena breathed deep. Cold air burned sharp and clean. Her knees still ached. She was still 40 pounds over standard, still officially support. But now, with field clearance restored and reinstatement pending, nothing had changed. Everything had changed. She made her way back to her quarters, passing the range where she'd proved herself years before, and again 3 nights ago, then past the memorial wall, where fallen names were carved into stone. Gold-filled letters caught the light even in winter darkness. Her name wasn't there. Not today. Maybe not ever, if luck held. Because she survived. Because she adapted. Because she remembered that a warrior's value isn't counted in miles run or pounds hauled. It's measured in shots taken when no one else can, in decisions made when others freeze, in standing when the world expects you to stay down. The rifle case waited in her room. She cleaned the M24 with methodical care, as she had 1,000 times. Every motion intentional, every component respected. The ritual was meditation, memory, and promise all at once. This weapon had saved lives. Not just on Christmas, but every time she carried it. Every time she refused to let it rust. Every time she chose readiness, when no one expected her to be needed. Some things are worth maintaining when everyone calls them obsolete, especially then. She reassembled the rifle, locked it in her locker beside the new plate carrier with the Delta 4 patch, and lay down to sleep. Tomorrow would bring questions, investigations, decisions about what came next. But tonight was Christmas, and for the first time in 3 years, Elena Frost felt she belonged. Not because others accepted her, but because she accepted herself. Outside, bells kept ringing. Snow kept falling. The world kept turning. Inside, Sergeant Elena Frost smiled and dreamed of perfect shots in impossible conditions. Because that was who she was, who she'd always been. And no amount of weight gained or lost would ever change that. 6 months later, Delta 4 deployed on a classified mission requiring precision fire support. The brief requested 1 marksman by name. Sergeant Elena Frost packed her kit, checked her rifle, and boarded the transport. Mercer met her at loadout. Glad you're here. Wouldn't miss it. Think you can make that 1,000-meter shot again. Elena adjusted her plate carrier. It fit perfectly now, built for her exactly as she was. Only one way to find out. They flew into darkness, into uncertainty, into the kind of moment where legends are born. But Elena Frost had already proven what she was, on the night they mocked her, the night she saved them all. Christmas night, when an overweight woman with a supposedly obsolete rifle took 6 impossible shots and landed everyone. They never laughed again, and neither did she.